San Diego?
Where's San Diego?
Morning.
Good morning.
Can't see it. Good morning.
And good morning, LA. This is LA right here.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning.
Our new guy.
Oh, did we miss your new guy? Sorry about that.
What?
We don't see the, was that Vista that said we missed a new guy?
No, it was Vegas.
Oh,
He's not here. Sorry.
Good morning from Vegas.
We thought we were on mute.
good morning, Vegas. Good morning, Fresno.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have a new guy.
All right.
We have a new George.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, is that our?
George is our new warehouse manager. Good morning, George.
Good morning, George.
I don't know why we have a clip
Good
share on.
morning,
It says we're
Sacramento.
receiving.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have a new person too.
Where? Who's talking?
Lower right.
Sacramento, hi.
Hi.
What's your name?
Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, you and I just talk. How's that?
Good morning, Portland.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning.
In Seaport.
Up in the upper
Oh, there
right.
they are. Hi.
It's all dark.
It's all dark in Portland. What happened?
We have too much sunshine.
So we have to walk some of it out.
You gotta pay your electric bill.
Travis.
Travis. Good morning, Reno. They're there.
Good morning.
Hey, Reno. Haven't we seen?
Good morning, Salt Lake.
Hey. Salt Lake, Salt Lake.
We have 2 new employees. Hi, I'm Jen.
Stand up.
Stand up.
I'm Kale.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Hi.
I don't know if Kale is a new sales rep. I don't know if he said his name or not, but he stood up as well.
Okay, good.
How you doing, sir?
Good, great. Good seeing you. Glad you're aboard.
Thanks, sir.
Good morning. Is Houston on? Good morning, Houston.
Good morning.
I don't think we can see Houston yet.
We can't see there.
Oh, there you are. Good
Good
morning.
Okay, we got one.
And good morning, North Carolina.
Where is it?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that. I think we should do this every day. We get to see all our divisions and
good.
say hello to them. I didn't miss anyone, did I? All right. So, Mr. Wilson and I were talking before, a couple of days before our chat with Charles, and I remembered something that you had said to me before, and it is, it's the people that you have with you that make the difference. And I remember when you said that, how much that stood out to me and the impression that made. And we talked about earlier this month, for those of you that don't know, we had our first management training session where we flew out most of our managers. They came out to LA and we had a day of training. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring everyone out. The business needs to run. But we brought most of them out and we had a day of training. And, wanted to talk to you about your thoughts on that, Mr. Wilson, our first time ever bringing everyone out and the investment in our people.
Well, the more we know each other, the better I feel about it. I honestly have felt that one of the reasons for our growth is our people. It is the reason for our growth. And when we can get everybody feeling they're on the team, doing the same things to help each other, and working to accomplish a goal that means good life for them, a good income for them, it really means that this whole company can grow. And if our managers, who can bring us so much information each, can help us to strive to make this goal, I feel that's the most important thing. Now, sure, it's a training program, but it's not that we're training, it's the fact that we're all training each other. And that, to me, is what I like. I really feel it's important to get the information that each and every one of you have to give to make this a better place to work for all of us. And so I'm really thrilled about it, frankly.
I remember when I started, you said your rule in hiring is to always hire better than yourself.
Well, that's pretty easy.
For me, that is, right?
But, that's true. Well, the rule is really that if someone leaves, you're sorry, but then you try to get someone even better. And they can help. Everybody does things better than others in different areas. And when we can all put all that together, we're just a better company for all of us. So let's get your benefits. You always, listen, there's always somebody smarter than you. Anybody that thinks they're the smartest person in the world, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. So it's nice to know that we can work together, try to do it on the same basis, and try to learn what everything is about. In other words, if you notice, management books now are talking about the fact that you've got to get your people involved, because if you don't get your people involved, and we've been doing this for all the years that we've been here, and we found that that's one of the things that makes it a company that's fun to be at, a company to grow. We're only at a pace that we feel is comfortable to everybody. So I think that really is what I'm saying.
Mr. Wilson, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How do you feel about the culture in years past, the employee culture versus now? Have you seen it evolve to a better, more of a positive way, or what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it's as you're growing, it's a lot different because you've got a lot more people, not more problems. The government's got a lot more regulations. And I believe that my brother and I always felt, we started off as partners, we always felt that we could work with each other. And it was, to me, very important that we started off that way. But I think we're so far ahead today. We've realized that we were right all this time. The more you get other people involved with you, and the more you get these really bright people coming aboard, the more you realize you really don't know as much as you think you know. And therefore, let us all get together and share the benefits of all of our abilities, and we can do a lot better job. And I think we're way ahead today. I think if you'll ask Vince, he's a pretty good observer because that's his business in a sense. He can see just the growth since he's been here.
Absolutely. I love when you say you hire the best people and then you get out of their way.
Yeah, well, that's what you want to do. You hire the best and see that they're doing, and the minute you feel that they're capable, then you get out of their way because they're going to do it better than you would have done it anyway.
Absolutely. So we have quite a few questions from the divisions, and some really good ones. We were talking, you and I, about the music that you listened to as a teenager. And I don't know how many of you out there know this or are familiar with this term called dance cards. And so when Mr. Wilson was a young man, when you would go dancing, you had to have a dance card. And you
didn't have to, depend on the kind of dance you went to. But if you went to a public place, you'd have to buy a ticket for each dance.
Per song, right?
Per song. And so, in other words, I can't remember what it was. Fortunately, I knew the guys on the pier. See, growing up in Ocean Park here, they had a pier there. all the big bands came down at that time. And
You said you saw Tommy Dorsey play.
Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, Glenn Miller, all of those famous bands, they all came through LA. This was the heart of the jazz, and a lot of Frank Sinatra, all of these. After all, Movie Land was out here. So we were very fortunate. We had a number of dance places here. And so living at the beach, I could walk down the beach and my buddies.
It was a dime or a quarter per
It was either a
dance.
dime a dance, and that way you and your girlfriend could have a dance. It was great, so we used to do a lot of.
So if you dated a dancer, she could break you.
Yeah, well, or my buddy wouldn't be there, so I couldn't dance.
And you wore neckties and suits back then.
No, we would wear a sport coat, necktie, suit.
To be able to go and dance.
But you dressed up to go down there. It was really good, but it's pretty good.
And then you and I were talking about the company, and one of the traditions that companies have when they make their first dollar is they frame it. So quite a few companies, you walk into their establishment. So I asked you if you and Ernie ever framed the first dollar you made.
No, we needed it.
That's wonderful. And so here's a question for you from one of the divisions. When and if you retire, what will be the first thing on your bucket list?
I guess planning my funeral. Well, what else? I don't want to do anything else. Why should I quit?
It's too much fun coming to work every day.
Yeah, right. Look who can aggravate me. Each one. And the more we have, the more aggravation I get. Oh, there you go.
And, so Mr. Wilson started with Ernest, he and his brother, when he got back from the Army. And so it started the conversation between he and I about bosses that you've had, because you've really only had a few bosses in your life, because you get out of the Army and you join Ernest, and then of course your law degree, and then you opened up your own law firm. But the first boss that we spoke of was your paper route boss, and then it went to the accounting. But the paper route boss, it was interesting during our conversation, that was one of the ones that left a long impression on you.
Well, in Salt Lake City, when you got a paper route in those days from the telegraph, and you had to, you could only keep the route if you got so many new customers a week, and you had a boss that would, but you had to buy your papers, so you were in business for yourself, except that if you didn't comply. And we had a tough little guy, and he was really something. So he was a wonderful experience, because I learned to sell, I learned to do a lot of things. When you're 12, that's pretty good, see. And so I earned all of my spending money from that time on, so.
I think we counted, I think it was only 3 bosses that you've had.
Well, no, I had more than that, because I had a number. Let's see, I went the Army, you had plenty of them.
Right.
But then I worked before I got out of high school, just 17, and I graduated Santa Monica.
That was the accounting firm.
So the first year I went to work for an accounting firm and learned bookkeeping and accounting, and with the CPA firm. And I had a great boss. And in those days, everybody knows the story, so I'll tell it again. But the minimum wage was 40 cents an hour. 40 cents an hour. But accountants weren't subject to the minimum wage. So,
I mean, they could go lower than that.
yeah, he hired me at 35 cents an hour. And so one of my great days of my life was, after 3 months, he says, Chuck, he says, I'm going to raise you to the minimum wage. So I got raised up to 40 cents an hour. So I thought that was pretty good. But it was incredible. So, things were different then. because I'd wear a suit as a freshman to UCLA. I was 17, you'd wear a suit. And when in those days at UCLA, if you were a freshman, you had to wear a beanie. So I'd have a beanie on my head, and I'd forget sometimes because I'd get the bus and go downtown to the county office because I'd do it in the morning and go to work with this beanie on my head, my suit. It was crazy. Anyway.
You mentioned at Lockheed, your department changed hands.
Well, that's a different story. You learn a lot. Then as the war hit in December 41, and then my brother volunteered to go into the Air Force and become a pilot, which he did. But that meant I was home alone, and I had because my dad died when I was 5.5, and my mother was a great lady. She somehow brought us up, and we didn't have very much money, but it was tough times. So then I had to be the earner. So I went to work at Lockheed. And I went to work there, and I got into the dispatch area, and we were a small group. And this tells you about big business. In other words, if you were a big businessman in the Lockheed organization, the more people you had, the higher pay you had. Well, our group was only 30 people.
One of the smallest.
The smallest. And every time a new guy got hired, our group would be transferred to him so that he could get paid more. So I learned about big business there. It was really tough. Lockheed was very tough. But it was...
They would acquire your department to add their paycheck.
Right, so it was very funny. But anyway, I worked there. I did the graveyard shift, and I had several bosses there, and you learn. You work hard. And the war was going on. It was a very tough time. So we also did ride sharing. And of course, I never had a car, but I would ride share to work. And it was tough times. And then, of course, I went into the Army. I was drafted.
You said you were thrilled.
I was thrilled. I'm 20 or 21, all the young people in the Army. And I had to stay home to take care of my mother, and I was happy when they forced me in the Army. But my poor mother, who was very had a rheumatic heart, and she was all home alone. She was home alone, and my brother was in Air Force, and I was in the Army. It was tough times.
She was strong.
She was strong lady. She was. I tell everybody, she was a huge lady, big, tall. She was almost 4'10".
And she could stop you at...
Yeah, she had these big black eyes, and at 30 paces she could stop my brother and I. We would come to attention. So she was great. She was one of the keys of my life. She was an incredible woman. Mm-hmm. And she brought us both up, and we both turned out pretty good.
So here's a question from one of our divisions. If you had to work in a position other than chairman here at Ernest, which would it be? Which would you choose, and why?
Well, there are so many interesting positions that we have now. It's amazing. There's so many. And having this accounting background, having my legal background, there's many opportunities that I could have. But in thinking it through, I'd love to do a lot of things, but to be honest with you, the people in those positions are so much better than I could be, so I wouldn't really want to try to get into that position. But I just think it's an interesting business. There's a lot of things here, and I think that all of us know that. But if you're really good at something, that's what you should do. And I'm not sure I'm that good at any of these things. So
I voted for recruiting, by the way, but
yeah.
Turn me down.
I'm pretty good at sweeping, but they won't hire me for that. They got themselves a vacuum cleaner. They took my job away.
Demoted to the broom. So in recent weeks, there's been a lot of activity coming out of NASA, color images of Pluto and Mars, water there, and we had a blood moon recently. And so, question to you: did you watch Neil Armstrong's first historic walk on the moon? And do you remember where you were or what your thoughts were at that time?
Oh, I think my wife and I were at home, and it was an incredibly marvelous, wonderful experience. You just felt marvelous. It was just a feeling of such joy, and you felt, my God, to be an American, and we as Americans were able to accomplish this. It was so incredible that, Kennedy had predicted they could do this, and we did it. And to see this, and when he said one step for mankind, it was just it was something. We were all proud to be Americans. I want to tell you, that was an ideal time.
Did people go out in the streets and make noise or celebrate?
I don't remember that. I just remember the joy I had, and all of us. We talked about it for, it was so, boy, you talk about unifying the country. This was the greatest, one of our great days. But it should have been, because people from the beginning of time wanted to go to the moon, and we Americans did it. So it's pretty great. I'm very proud to be one. We're lucky.
Wonderful. Another question is that you've lived through quite a bit of history: the Great Depression, World War II, the moon landing, machinery and technical advancements that are impossible to list, but quite a few of them. Of all the history and advancements in our world since you were born, which ones stand out to you and why?
I think communications have changed so, and the ability to communicate is just incredible. When you think in terms of my lifetime, we couldn't communicate at all, hardly. If you placed a long distance telephone call, it was amazing. And I remember I would be in England after the war was over there, trying to call my mother at home, and you had to stand in line and wait to get a call. And this was terrific that we could call and talk to somebody. And then
Was the phone in her house?
Yeah, she had the phone, but this was great. See, and I can remember when people just started getting phones. And a lot of people didn't have phones, or you'd have to go use neighbors, and it was just amazing. And like during the war, you used Morse code as a code. You couldn't communicate at all. And today, with imagery, what televisions had, and then now you can look at your iPad or whatever you've got, your telephone, your phone. It's just incredible. So I think that is probably one of the great things. And I was kidding him. I said, but probably the most convenient invention that I really thought was very comfortable was before my time, but it was the toilet.
Yeah.
I've loved that. I mean, that's something you can really enjoy.
So I think everyone here knows that Mr. Wilson drives himself to work every day. And there's a question: how do you deal with LA traffic? And you were in it this morning.
It's tough. It's very tough. But you know what? That's part of the business. If I live in one end, and every one of us, a lot of us drive a long way. So it's just part of the living. But I still love to come here.
We talked about a helicopter.
Well, if everybody in this company would work their butts off and make a lot of money, I could have a helicopter. So would you mind working your butts off for me? How's that?
That's wonderful. In all your years, working in packaging, in the packaging industry, what is your most memorable experience besides the day that I started?
Well, we did have sad days. There's no question about it. Well, that's what can I tell you? As Shakespeare said, the truth will out.
The truth will out.
Oh, I mean, I've had so many wonderful experiences. Really, I can't say it. You know, just the fact that I can be here and talk to all these people, look up there and see all of these divisions and see them yawning and saying, "Well, shut up, can I go back to work?" You can go back to work, it's okay, let's go, all right? What do you say?
Here's the last one. Who are your heroes?
Who are my heroes?
I love the two that you mentioned from history.
Well, the two greatest, as far as I'm concerned, are in our country, are Washington and Lincoln, because without them, we'd never have had a country. I think the most underrated person that I think is Washington, because Washington wasn't considered the intellectual, but he was the great practical, the man without whom we could have never been. They wanted him to be a king. That's what everybody did. No. They wanted him to serve many terms. No. He created this country in many ways. Without him, we would have never won the revolution. So he was something just because he was practical, he was smart, and he really gave us a country. And Lincoln was an intellectual. Probably the greatest speech ever written was, Gettysburg Address. And here's a guy who just went through grade school and taught himself to be a lawyer. Yeah. And he won some very big law cases, incidentally. And yet he was so immersed in what he did for this country. He really made it into what we are. And they really stand out in my mind, those two. And I know we've had great presidents since then. Certainly, I'm very fond of Teddy Roosevelt, but I think FDR, Roosevelt was one of the greats. He got us through the Depression. He's got us through the war. He was the basics for the United Nations. Everything he was incredible. He really was. And here's a man who was crippled. Yeah. I mean, he could hardly, nobody knew how bad he was. And here's a guy that overcame adversity. He was an incredible example to us. We don't realize what he went and the suffering he went through. And yet he was capable of being one of the greatest world leaders. So he was a great president. But the two that really, those two, I think. But but there's there's so many great people. There's so many. I mean, they're from other lands, other countries. You go back in history, they're amazing things. So you can take the benefits from their greatness, and every one of them had faults. If you look at any one that's human, they had faults. Don't we all?
That's it for the questions. You're off the hook.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for putting up with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Keep sending your questions.
Okay.